Welcome to the HFY Codex Tale. If you like our videos, keep supporting and subscribe to our channel. The human prisoner. The metal gates slammed shut behind him. Lance, a human engineer from Earth, stood tall in the center of the alien arena. His arms were chained in front of him, and his face was calm, but his eyes watched everything. Above him, in a high throne carved from black stone, sat Commander Razira. She was tall, armored in dark scales, with golden eyes that didn't blink. Around her, dozens of alien guards stood, their weapons aimed at the human. And yet Lance didn't look scared. Not even a little. A show, not a trial. Razira leaned forward. Her voice echoed through the cold air. "Human, you stand in the blood ring of the Core Empire. Do you understand what that means?" Lance tilted his head. "You brought me here to watch me beg." Gasps echoed from the guards. One hissed, another raised his blaster. But Razira lifted a hand. Silence returned. "No, I brought you here to test something, to see if the rumors are true that humans are too stupid to feel fear." Lance smiled. "Or maybe we just know when someone's bluffing." "The pet arrives." Razira's eyes narrowed. She tapped the side of her throne. A large gate opened across the arena. Heavy footsteps echoed, something growled. Out walked a creature the size of a shuttle pod. Its skin was dark and leathery, 4 glowing eyes, long claws that scraped the floor, a mouth filled with silver teeth. The guards stepped back as it passed them. This was Harak, Razira's personal war beast. "He has torn apart soldiers," Razira said. "He hunts by fear, he smells it, and he eats it." Lance looked at the beast as it approached him slowly. But he didn't move. "No fear." Harak stopped just feet away from Lance. It sniffed the air, growled, raised its claws. Lance still didn't flinch. His hands were bound. He had no weapons, but he stood tall, staring into the creature's 4 burning eyes. 1 second. 2. 3. Nothing happened. The beast didn't attack. Instead, it lowered its head and sat down. Shock in the arena. Gasps rang through the audience. Even Razira leaned forward. "He didn't kill you." Lance shrugged. "Maybe he didn't feel like it." Razira stood slowly, her golden cape dragging behind her. "No one has ever faced him without shaking. Maybe that says more about your people than mine." Another wave of shocked whispers passed through the guards. This human wasn't just calm. He was dangerous in a different way. A glimmer of respect. Razira stepped down from her throne and walked across the arena. Her boots hit the stone with slow, powerful steps. She stood in front of Lance, towering over him. He looked up, still steady. "What do you want?" he asked. Razira studied him, then said softly, "I want to know how you did that. What's your trick?" Lance looked down at the beast, now quiet at his feet. "No trick, he just knew I wouldn't run." "Ending hook." Razira narrowed her eyes. "Unchain him." A guard hesitated. "Commander, he's still." "I said unchain him. I want to see what he does when he's free." The guards obeyed. The chains dropped. Lance didn't run, didn't fight. He simply stretched his wrists and said, "Feels better, thanks." Razira turned to leave, but paused. "You're still my prisoner, human, but for now you walk." And as she left the arena, her beast stayed beside Lance. Quiet, watching, waiting. The beast watches back. After the chains had fallen from his wrists, Lance stood alone in the center of the arena. The echo of the dropping metal still filled the air. Around him, the crowd's murmurs faded into a heavy silence as they tried to understand what they had witnessed. In the stillness, Harak, the massive 4-eyed beast, did not immediately move away. Instead, it slowly turned its head and fixed its glowing gaze upon him. For a long moment, the creature simply sat there, as if watching. Lance could feel the intensity in its eyes, a silent question that went beyond the physical. The guards who had once threatened him now shifted uneasily, unsure whether to act or to watch. Even Commander Razira, who had stood before him moments ago, now remained at a distance, her expression unreadable. Lance took a cautious step forward, his eyes never leaving Harak. "What do you want?" he murmured, not expecting an answer. But the beast slowly stood up, towering over him. It snorted, and for a split second its massive chest rose as if it were about to roar, yet instead it merely lowered its head again. There was no aggression, only a deep, almost thoughtful stillness. Back at the outer edge of the arena, whispers spread among the onlookers. Some speculated that the human had tricked the beast. Others wondered if perhaps the creature, too, was not as savage as it appeared. Meanwhile, Commander Rhaezyra had returned to her private chamber. Even though she had issued orders, her eyes betrayed a glimmer of doubt. Something about the human's calm presence had stirred a reaction even in her hardened heart. Inside the secure corridors of the station, the incident was already making its rounds. Security cameras captured every detail, and soon the footage was being discussed by officers in hushed tones. "Did you see how it didn't attack?" one officer said. "I've never seen Exharach act like that before," another replied. The buzz in the station grew, and soon rumors spread that the beast was showing a side that no one had predicted. Lance, still standing in the arena's center, felt something shift inside him. His heart pounded, but not with fear, more with curiosity and a strange sense of connection. He remembered every moment of his captivity, every threat that had been thrown his way. Yet here he was, unafraid and even defiant. Perhaps his calm had disarmed the creature in ways that brute force could not. Later, as the arena was being cleared, one of the guards approached him with caution. "Human, you must leave this area immediately," the guard said, his voice low and tense. "There is an order for all witnesses to be brought in for further questioning." Lance shook his head. "I am not running," he replied firmly. "I want to understand why that beast did not attack." The guard frowned, then reluctantly escorted him to a nearby holding area. There, in a small observation room with large windows overlooking the arena, Lance sat alone. Outside, Exharach moved slowly, almost as if it were patrolling the area. Every so often, it would pause and look in the direction of the holding area, its four eyes glinting in the artificial light. As hours passed, Lance's mind churned with questions. Why had Exharach not attacked him? Was it possible that the creature sensed something in him, a sign of strength or perhaps something more? Humane? He replayed the moment in his mind, when the beast lowered its head instead of roaring, when it sat quietly and seemed almost protective. At that moment, a quiet voice came over the intercom. It was Commander Rhaezyra. "All detainees will be transferred for standard processing in 12 hours. Prepare for further examination." The announcement was routine, but for Lance, it meant that his fate was still being decided. He wondered if the calm he had shown had changed everything for Exharach, and perhaps for the entire station. Some of the other humans captured before him had broken under fear, but he had held on, and that, he believed, might have made a difference. Meanwhile, in a darkened corridor of the station, a lone officer reviewed the security footage. His eyes narrowed as he watched the slow, deliberate movements of Exharach. He made a note on his digital pad. Unusual behavior detected, possible emotional imprint from subject. He didn't know what it meant, but he knew it was dangerous. If one alien beast could change its behavior based on the human's actions, then maybe the whole system was at risk. Back in his holding cell, Lance closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He recalled the moment when Exharach had looked at him with something like recognition, and he felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, his defiance had planted a seed of change, a seed that might grow into something powerful enough to challenge the old order. And as the seconds ticked by towards his transfer, he silently vowed that no matter what came next, he would fight for the truth. For if an alien beast could be moved by his quiet bravery, then perhaps there was hope for more than just survival. The translator chip. The metal door to Lance's holding room hissed open. Two guards stepped in without a word, weapons lowered but ready. Behind them came someone unexpected, Commander Rhaezyra herself. Lance sat on the bench, his back straight, his face calm. He didn't flinch when she entered. He didn't even stand. That made her pause. "Still not afraid of me, human?" she asked, voice like cold steel. "Should I be?" Lance replied. She studied him for a long second, then waved the guards away. The door sealed shut behind them. A private conversation. Rhaezyra didn't speak right away. She walked over to the window and looked down at the arena below. From here, she could see Exharach packing slowly in a wide circle. "He's been restless since yesterday," she said softly. "Won't respond to anyone, not even me." Lance didn't respond. She turned to him. "He listens to you, why?" Lance shrugged. I didn't order him, I didn't threaten him. Maybe that's new for him. Razira frowned, clearly not used to being questioned. You speak like you know his mind. I don't, Lance replied, but I know what fear smells like and what respect feels like. The translator device. Razira pulled a small silver chip from her pocket and held it between her fingers. Do you know what this is? Lance raised an eyebrow. Old model translator. She nodded. Your speech is recorded, but it can't translate emotional tones. This one can. It was once used on diplomats until they found out it could also pick up hidden fear. She handed it to him. Put it in, I want to hear your truth. Lance looked at her, then slowly inserted the chip behind his ear. A soft click, the translator synced. He blinked twice as it activated. Well, he said, now we speak without filters. The unexpected result. But something else happened. A high-pitched chime echoed through the chamber's comm system. The translator had connected, not just to Razira, but to HFY. The beast, still circling below, suddenly stopped. It turned its four glowing eyes toward the command window. Then it let out a sound, not a roar but a low, vibrating hum. Lance winced as the translator chip pulsed. Words began to form in his mind, halting, broken, rough. HHHHH, human, no pain. Razira froze. Did he just speak? Lance stood up slowly, eyes wide. He's not a pet, he said quietly. He's sentient. Everything changes. Razira's face lost its usual cold calm. She backed away a step. That's impossible. He was bred for war, he can't speak. Maybe no one ever listened, Lance replied. The translator crackled again. Hunted, used, obey no more. HFY's voice trembled like thunder through the comms. Razira gripped the edge of the table. If the council hears about this, they'll kill him, and you. Then we tell them, Lance said, or we expose them. She looked at him, truly looked. This man she had meant to break. Might be the one to free her beast. And possibly herself. Ending hook. Suddenly, an urgent alarm blared across the station. Unauthorized message intercepted, signal spreading. The comms officer's voice cracked through the speakers. Commander, someone's broadcasting from the translator chip. It's transmitting to outer sectors. Razira turned to Lance, eyes blazing. What did you do? But Lance's face remained calm. I didn't press anything. He looked down at the chip. I think he did. The night the beast growled. The lights went out. Alarms screamed across the station, blinking red through the dark halls. Lance felt the floor shudder under his feet. Somewhere deep in the structure, a blast had hit the outer wall. Power grids hit, someone shouted over the station intercom. System breach on level 3. Razira's voice barked into the command line. Lock down all sectors, activate emergency shields, secure the prisoner. But it was too late. A blast rocked the floor again, and the door behind Lance exploded open. He barely had time to react before he was thrown back. When he looked up, HFY was standing in the doorway. Beast in the dark. The massive creature glowed faintly in the flickering light. Its four eyes shone bright red, its claws scraped the floor with each step. Lance backed up slowly. He had no weapons, no armor, no protection. HFY, he said, voice steady, even as the walls shook. You don't have to do this. The beast let out a deep, rumbling growl. Its voice crackled again in his mind, half beast, half thought. Pain, memory, rage. Then it stepped forward, slowly, dangerously. Locked in. An emergency door slammed shut behind them. Lance and HFY were now trapped in the dark. Razira's voice echoed over the speaker. Lance, the override is offline. You're locked in with him. Lance glanced around. There was no exit, no light. Only the sound of the beast's heavy breathing. If you can hear me, he said quietly, you don't want this. You remember what they did, but I'm not them. The growl shifted. HFY roared. The walls trembled, lights exploded above them, sparks rained down like fire. Lance stood still. One step, another, He walked toward the beast, not away. Razira shouted again. "What are you doing? He'll tear you apart." "Maybe," Lance said, "but I won't run." He stopped just a few feet from the creature. "You're not just a weapon, you're not her pet. You're you and I see you." The beast growled again, but this time it was different. Lower, slower. Like a question. The memory in the mind. Suddenly, Lance's vision blurred. The translator chip pulsed, and a wave of images flooded his mind. Chains, needles, fire, screams. Exharak, younger, smaller, alone in a metal cage. Razira years ago, reaching out to touch his head, whispering something soft. Then anger battles blood. Being told, kill, obey, destroy. The images vanished. Lance gasped and fell to his knees. The beast towered above him. And then it bowed. Razira arrives. The emergency door finally opened. Razira rushed in, weapon drawn. She stopped cold. Exharak stood beside Lance, calm, silent. The two of them were surrounded by broken metal, smoke, and peace. "How?" she whispered. Lance looked up at her. "He showed me what you never did." "What do you mean?" "He remembers everything, and you were kind to him once." Razira lowered her weapon slowly. "He never bowed to me like that." Lance stood, weak but steady. "Maybe you stopped seeing the soul inside the beast." Ending hook. Far away in a control room, a shadowed figure watched the surveillance feed. A quiet voice spoke. "The human has bonded, the creature is learning. Prepare the override, it's time to erase them both." Back on the arena floor, Exharak turned his head sharply, like he had heard something. He let out one soft growl. Not at Lance, not at Razira, but at something coming. She lowers her weapon. Commander Razira stood in silence. Her weapon still hung at her side, gripped tight, but no longer raised. Before her, Lance stood tall beside Exharak, the once feared war beast now resting calmly. Guards filled the hallway outside the chamber. All eyes were on her. Waiting, watching, expecting her to give the order. "Commander," one of her officers said sharply, "permission to neutralize the human." Razira didn't answer. Her golden eyes remained locked on Lance's face, not because he was a threat, but because he was a dangerous doubt. In her mind, everything twisted. She remembered the moment she was chosen for command, told to rule through strength, never mercy. She had led armies, broken rebellions, earned her place through blood and cold resolve. But now this human had stood in front of her beast and was still breathing. Not because of tech, not trickery, because he had spoken with honesty. And the beast, her beast, had listened. Pressure from above. Suddenly, a message buzzed through her personal comm. "Commander Razira, Central Authority has reviewed the arena footage. You are to correct the error immediately. Eliminate the human, reset the beast. If you refuse, prepare to be replaced." The message ended. No voice, just orders. Razira slowly turned off the comm and looked down at her blade. Then at her men. Then at Lance. The choice. She stepped forward. Her guards raised their weapons. Lance didn't move. Exharak stood up, growling low. Razira lifted her blade. For a moment, everything stopped. Then she dropped it. It clanged loudly on the floor. "No," she said firmly, "I will not kill him." Gasps filled the hallway. Her guards looked at each other in confusion. "Commander." She stood straight. "He did what none of us could. He earned the beast's trust. That makes him more than a prisoner. That makes him part of this command." The first rebellion. Some guards lowered their weapons. Others didn't. One Captain Dren stepped forward furious. "You disgrace the order. You let a soft-skinned alien change you." "You were changed the moment you saw him live through Exharak," Razira replied. Dren raised his rifle. "If you won't follow the authority's command, then by law, you are no longer commander." Razira stood still. "Then come and take it." Before anyone could move, HFY roared. A shockwave blasted through the chamber, lights flickered, guards fell back. But Lance didn't move, and Rhaezyra didn't flinch. A new bond. Rhaezyra turned to Lance. You didn't kneel when I threatened you. You didn't run when he growled. Now I need to ask, will you stand with me? Lance nodded once. I already am. They stood together, human-beast commander. For the first time, not as enemies, but as something far more dangerous to the Empire. A united front. Ending Hook. In the shadows of the calm tower, a hidden officer whispered into a transmitter. The human has turned her. The beast has bonded. Activate the purge signal. Somewhere deep beneath the station, a countdown began. Purge protocol activated, targeting all non-loyal units. Countdown 3 hours. And no one on the surface knew it had begun. The challenge. The arena was filled again. Guards, officers, spectators, all called to witness a single event, Commander Rhaezyra's loyalty trial. In the center stood a tall metal platform, and on it Lance, unchained, calm, watching. And behind him, silent but watching every move, was HFY. The beast didn't growl, it simply stood at the edge like a shadow with teeth. The public test. From the high tower, a voice echoed through the arena speakers. Commander Rhaezyra, you have refused a direct order. You will now prove your loyalty by completing the command. The crowd waited. Step forward, eliminate the human, or be marked as disloyal. And face purge protocol. Rhaezyra stood at the opposite end of the arena. A sword was placed in her hand. Heavy, sharp, meant for war. She walked slowly toward the center. Every step echoed like thunder in the silent arena. Lance never moved. Face to face again. She stopped in front of him. The crowd leaned forward. HFY growled softly, but didn't strike. Rhaezyra looked into Lance's eyes. No fear. No anger. Only trust. Do you regret trusting me? She whispered. No, Lance said, because you're still holding the blade down. She looked at her hand. He was right. Her sword tip hovered over the floor, not raised, not ready. Just waiting. The moment of truth. A final voice rang out. 10 seconds, Commander. Make your choice. The crowd began counting. 10, 9, 8. Rhaezyra gripped the sword tighter. Her breathing slowed. 7, 6. She looked at Lance one last time. And dropped the blade. Clang. Chaos erupts. Gasps echoed like thunder. A red alarm blared instantly. Commander disloyal, purge protocol engaged. All across the station, lockdowns triggered. Turrets powered up. Explosives hidden in corridors armed. Guards turned toward the arena with weapons drawn. But they weren't aiming at Lance. They were aiming at her. The beast responds. Before the first shot fired, HFY roared. A full shockwave burst through the arena. The guards nearest the platform were thrown back, their weapons scattered. Lance shielded Rhaezyra with his body as the beast leapt forward. Not to kill, to protect. She chose not war. HFY's voice echoed into every translator channel. She chose us. The entire arena froze. The beast had spoken, publicly to all species. Ending Hook. In the silence, a new voice came through the central speakers. This station no longer belongs to a commander. It belongs to traitors and beasts. Initiating final purge countdown, 1 hour remaining. Rhaezyra stood beside Lance. Her voice was steady now. They're coming for all of us. Lance nodded. Then let's make our stand count. HFY crouched beside them, ready. And for the first time ever, in the middle of a blood ring. A human, a beast, and a war queen stood together. The beast chose its alpha. The countdown had begun. Final purge protocol, 00:59:54. The station rumbled beneath their feet. Doors sealed, defense drones activated, lights turned red. In the center of the arena, Lance, Commander Rhaezyra, and Exharac stood back to back. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but not alone, because every camera in the station was still rolling. The message they never wanted sent. Up in the broadcast tower, the translator chip still pulsed with power. Exharac's earlier words had been recorded, and now streamed to every channel across the quadrant. She chose not war. She chose us. The beast had spoken with emotion, with reason, with choice. And the galaxy had heard it. Messages were already pouring in from other species. That creature is sentient. Why is the Empire silencing a voice? What else have they hidden? The final push begins. A wall exploded behind them. Dozens of elite purge troops stormed into the arena, silent, fast, deadly. Their orders: erase the beast, eliminate the human, execute the commander. Rhaezyra grabbed a fallen blaster and tossed another to Lance. "You ever fired one of these?" she asked. "Nope," Lance said, catching it. "But I learned fast." Exharac snarled, then roared, leaping into the wave of soldiers like a living shield. The fight began. Not just a weapon anymore. Exharac didn't kill out of rage. He disabled, blocked, protected. For every soldier that raised a weapon at Lance or Rhaezyra, Exharac stood between them. "Protect, not obey," his voice growled softly in their heads. "I choose them." It was no longer a beast on a leash. It was a soul defending its pack. The turning point. As the battle raged, something unexpected happened. More guards arrived, but they didn't fire. They threw down their weapons. One spoke up. "The beast speaks, the human stands. The commander chose honor. I won't be part of this purge." More followed. Soon half the purge squad stood behind Rhaezyra, not against her. The system that ruled by fear was breaking. The final choice. But then a deep voice echoed across the arena. The Central Authority had activated a kill switch. A massive cannon rose from the ceiling, aimed at the center of the platform. Rhaezyra and Lance stood beneath it, glowing red in the targeting system. "This ends now," the voice said. "Two traitors, one beast, 3 problems, 1 shot." A blinding light began to charge. The beast's last move. Exharac looked at them both. Then moved. Fast. He leapt between them and the cannon, just as it fired. Boom. Light, heat, silence. When the smoke cleared, Lance and Rhaezyra were still standing. But Exharac lay motionless at their feet. A death that spoke louder than words. Lance dropped to his knees beside him. Rhaezyra knelt too, her hand on the beast's thick hide. The glow in Exharac's eyes faded, but a soft whisper came through the translator one last time. "Freedom earned." And then he was gone. The aftermath. The purge failed. The authorities' control shattered. The broadcast of Exharac's sacrifice reached systems far beyond what they planned. Rhaezyra stepped down from command, but not in shame. In choice. She now traveled as an independent envoy, spreading truth. And beside her always was Lance. Epilogue: the beast chose its alpha. Years later, in a memorial garden built on the ruins of the arena, a child pointed at a statue. A statue of a large, 4-eyed beast, crouched beside a man and a tall alien woman. "Who was he?" the child asked. The teacher smiled. "He was called a monster. But in the end, the galaxy learned who the real animals were. He didn't serve a master. He chose an alpha. And that choice changed everything." White heavy check marked the end.